I think I view life as, first of all, obviously a strive or a struggle to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think everything I do, obviously, I try to do fi sabilillah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think if I was ever complacent or stagnant in my life in terms of where I think my relationship is, I think I would ultimately digress. I think that my aim in life is to try to make a change to those around me. It might be my family, my friends, or the wider community. And through that, I think I achieve closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not easy, it's often putting myself outside my comfort zone, but I think that's the only way that I can really bring about a positive change in myself and in those around me. I'm a doctor. I'm almost to become a GP. I'm a GP registrar at the moment. And I didn't always think I wanted to become a doctor. I think there was a bit of an expectation on me to do so because my parents were both doctors, and I kind of didn't want to go anywhere near it for a long time until I did a bit of work experience in it. And there was something about it that I fell in love with, the very unique patient doctor interaction that I witnessed. And throughout medical school, I went through lots of ups and downs as to, why is it I went into this and so forth. But I came out and I was positive and raring to go as a doctor. But it's taken a big toll on my life. I am a mother of 3, as well as being a wife, and trying to juggle all of those is always very difficult. But I think being a doctor also takes a very personal toll on me. I often come home from work exhausted physically and mentally. I take on, if you like, a lot of the burdens of my patients. I listen to them, I try to be there for them, but as a result, I'm quite tired at the end of it, internally. But and also, to be honest, it's very difficult in terms of the hours that I've had to put in, the sacrifices that I've had to make, so many things I've had to miss out on. I wouldn't be able to do it without my mother and my husband, I would say, who have always been there to look after the children, to motivate me, to push me further. So those are the negative aspects. Positively, though, I love what I do. I don't think there's anything that really matches it. I'm able to be there at the most testing moments of a person's life. My patients open up to me and tell me things that they've never told anyone else in their lives, because they trust me and they know that I can listen to them and try my best to help them. And that position of responsibility is a privilege that I can't look down upon. So despite all the difficulties that I've gone through in terms of the working aspect, in terms of trying to look after my children at the same time, in terms of needing to keep motivated to keep doing it day in, day out, the fact is that I probably wouldn't choose to do anything else. And I've seen people throughout life. I've seen from when they were born, worked in obstetrics, worked in pediatrics, I've worked in care of the elderly, so I've worked in two ends of the spectrum. I've seen things that people probably would never imagine being able to see. I've seen children passing away in front of me. I've seen parents coping with children who are very sick. I've seen people's lives shattered in one single blow and changed forever. And I've had to comfort them at that time and be there to help them through a very difficult time. And I've held the hands of dying patients and watched them pass away and watched their family grieve for them afterwards. And that's a really unique position to be in, and a huge responsibility, and something that I'm forever grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for because I've learned through that about the fragility of the human beings, about the fact that everything comes to an end. And if I go into work and I think that I've had a difficult day or I'm feeling quite down, I just have to look and feel and empathise with my patients to know that there are people in much worse positions off than me, and I have to continually be grateful and thankful for the health and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. The other aspect that medicine has taught me really is to be more confident. I was always a very quiet, shy person growing up. People told me I couldn't become a doctor, to be honest, because the doctor types, that the people that went into medicine were very different from me. They were more outgoing, more extroverted. And I had to learn, it was a steep learning curve throughout medical school and my career, to be able to speak up, to interact, to be heard, and to be more confident in myself and my abilities. I'm still learning. I still do sometimes with a confidence booster, but I think I've come such a long way, and I think medicine and being a doctor particularly has taught me that, and taught me that a woman should never feel confined. We have multiple roles in society. We are mothers, we are daughters, but we can achieve outside the home as well, and we can do things like become doctors. We should never feel that I can't do that, because I think in a small way I'm testimony to the fact that you can, and lots of other friends around me are as well. I've said I don't want to go in anymore, I can't do this anymore. I've literally at some points been thrown into doing night shifts, for example, in paediatrics or things like that, where I have no experience, and I felt very scared and I've not wanted to do it anymore. And it's always my husband who actually gives me a little pep talk, if you like, or tries to keep me motivated. And he always from the beginning quotes the ayah, فَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. So whoever gives life to one person, it's as if he's given life to the whole humanity. And so that keeps me motivated, keeps me going. And then when I go into work, obviously my husband is always at the background looking after the children, not complaining about that. So I'm very, very blessed to have that in my life. As I said, I'm a mother of 3. My children range from almost 9 to 3 months is my newest child, and I have one in between. And the difficulty, the struggles of motherhood for me start right from the beginning, from the very first moment that I become pregnant. I have a lot of sickness, I have quite difficult pregnancies. And really, I never, I have a very close relationship with my mother. I always have. I always looked up to her and saw her as my role model, but I never appreciated the value of what she did for me until I became a mother myself. Because you lose so much of what you were before, what you thought you were. So you are very much centered on yourself, on your own life, on your own well-being before you become a mother, and that's how you define yourself, even though you are a wife, of course, and you are a daughter and you do all of those things, but you are essentially an individual. When you have children, that all changes, and you are suddenly responsible for the lives of completely new human beings. With my first child, I read, when I was pregnant, I read a lot, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about being a mother, and I was a doctor, of course, and therefore I was very skilled. But when I held my baby in my hands for the first time, I was overwhelmed by the fact that I had this whole human being to nurture and take care of. And the beginning part is difficult, it's physically demanding, but I think it gets a lot harder as they grow older, because there's a responsibility that you feel in yourself to raise them really, really well. You never know if you're doing the right thing or not. So am I being too harsh? Am I being too lenient? Am I explaining things the way I should? Am I nurturing them to give them a strong sense of identity as Muslims, but allowing them to make those choices for themselves? And you never know whether you're doing the right thing. But there's nothing greater in life, I think, for me to this date than looking at my children and the love that comes about through it. And And so me and my husband have always tried to work together to come up with a plan or strategies, and we're always modifying this as to how to raise our children. We modify it because we reach different ages and realise that there's a whole new world that we didn't think about before. And a child's personality is also something that's very strong from an early age, and so every child has to be raised in a very particular way. You have to adapt yourself to raising that child in a certain way. But our ethos has always been a shared one from the first moment we got married, is that we want to raise our children to be working fi sabilillah, working for the love of the Ahlulbayt, and to be strong in themselves, confident in their self-identity. And hopefully, inshallah, that's what we're trying to achieve, although we are still probably very early on that road. It's a long and bumpy road. Another big aspect of my life is the fact that I teach Quran. So from probably university age, I'd say stumbled or came upon or was blessed with the coincidence of being involved in a Quran class, and I, for the first time in my life, saw women that recited the Quran with full tajweed, the same as you do sort of men, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world of recitation. And I spent quite a few years learning the ahkam tajweed, which is the rules of recitation, as well as memorization, as well as we touched upon the meanings of the ayat as well. And it opened my eyes to the beauty and the wonders of the Quran. And I was privileged enough to be given an opportunity to start teaching it as well. I left for a little while as I was working full-time for a while and having children and so forth, but in the last 3 years or so I started teaching again, and I teach regularly tajweed to adults as well as sometimes to children as well. I also would try to do some tafsir and things like that, which is the meanings or the sort of the reasons why ayat were revealed and what they mean. I think that through the recitation, it opens up a whole new world of understanding and loving the Quran, because if someone is able to recite it as it should be recited and recite it in a beautiful manner, there's nothing more harmonious and beautiful to listen to. But that's not obviously where it stops. It's important then to go on to understand the meanings and then to go on and apply these things. And I'm very passionate about the fact that I think that as Muslims we've neglected the Quran in many ways, that we don't know it as well as we should. There's an ayah in the Quran where Nabi Muhammad almost complains or says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah, inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura, that my ummah, my qawm, my people have taken this Quran as a forsaken thing. So while we say we are Muslims and we say that we follow the Quran, we don't know it as well as we should. We're not even close to knowing it as well as we should, I think. And that actually came home to me when I was in university one day, when I went to an interfaith lecture given by a Christian who knew the Quran very well. And he was trying to say, well, Islam says this and Islam says that, and quoting ayat from the Quran, exact verses from the Quran. And I wanted to argue against him, but I did not have the tools to be able to do so. I wasn't able to quote ayat and say, no, but this ayat says this and ayat says that, and I felt that was a real shortcoming on my part. And I feel to this day I'm probably, I'm better. I know the Quran better than I did before, but I still don't know it as well as I should. But I think as a community as a whole, we don't know it as well as we should. And we're being attacked from all sides at the moment, and people quote random ayat from the Quran saying Muslims believe that and Muslims are like this and so forth. And I think we're not able to quote back the way we should, because we just do not have this relationship with the Quran. It's something that I'm very passionate about trying to teach to my students, but also to my children from a very young age, to love the Quran, to be familiar with the ayat of the Quran, to have them in the future, hopefully flowing with ayat of the Quran whenever they need it, and to be able to rely on it in times of need, and to make it a huge part of our lives. And so one thing I try to encourage, and I hope to strive to do myself, is to just take a little time out every day to read a little bit of it, and try to understand it. And if you can, go to classes and learn how to recite it better, or if you can listen online to tafsir and so forth, then that's even better. But just to do a little bit every day to become more familiar with it, so that it becomes a more integral part of our lives. I've been privileged as a doctor in my training as a GP, to work in mental health. I worked in psychiatry for 6 months, amongst other things. And now as a general practitioner, I see a huge amount of people coming in with mental health issues. The most common being anxiety and depression. I think as a community, though, we don't give enough importance, or we don't think about these things often enough. Sometimes people see depression as a sign of weakness, or anxiety as a sign of weakness, or a lack of faith. And so maybe people are afraid to come out and say, well, this is how I'm feeling. But we know that that's just far too simplistic, that mental health issues do have a biological component, of course, as well as a psychological one. And whilst, yes, there is the possibility to help yourself, sometimes you need the tools to be able to do so. And unless people are willing to talk more about it, acknowledge it as something to be treated, then we won't get very far. Unfortunately, there's a huge stigma surrounding these things. If someone was to become very ill with, say, for example, a diagnosis of cancer or heart disease or something like that, then generally people find out and they feel very sorry for them, and they read Quran, dua for them, they go and visit them in hospital. But people who are suffering from mental health problems do so in silence. They often try to hide these things. And so actually we might think that this is not much of a problem in those people surrounding me, but sometimes often the most happiest of looking people, or the most outgoing or sociable people, are actually inside going through a lot of turmoil. And we all suffer from various aspects of it, but actually depression full on and anxiety in its various forms can totally cripple your life and put your mind in turmoil. And so I think my message would be to start thinking more about it, to look at yourself, and if you feel that you are going through anything like that, to try to seek help, whether it's by going to your GP and talking about it, or by talking about it to those around you, if hopefully they'll understand and take it on board. But seeking help and not allowing yourself to suffer in silence. And the second thing would be, if you see people around you that you think are suffering from these kind of things, to try to be a comfort to them. You might not know what to say all the time. You might feel ill-equipped to be able to solve their problems, and I don't think they're looking for any solutions, but at least you can be a shoulder to cry on, an ear to listen to their problems, and someone to point them in the right direction to seek help, because there is help out there, and they should never despair that they will never ever feel normal or never feel like everyone else. There is always tools within yourself that you need to unlock to be able to overcome these things, but you need help. And you have to not be afraid to admit sometimes that you do need help. And we need to, as a community, be willing to help in such cases, not to judge or stigmatize, because that should be one of the strengths that we have as a Muslim community, to be able to help one another in times of need. Me and my husband, when we got married, we had quite shared aims in many ways. We wanted to try to help and change the community around us, and that was a very important thing to do. And a few years ago, we realised that we didn't have a sense of community. Maybe, I come from Iraq originally. My family lived. My parents were from Iraq. I've never, unfortunately, lived there myself. But when we were growing up in this country, we had a community. So we'd all go to a mosque, or an Islamic centre on a particular day, on a Saturday or a Sunday. We'd celebrate all the Mawalid and commemorate the Wafat. And we'd do this as a community. And it was wonderful for us growing up because we'd see our friends, we'd socialise with them, but also learn something at the same time. And growing up in a very secular environment, it gave us the strength and the inner confidence to be able to be proud of our faith. And we realised that we lost some of this, maybe partly because everyone became far too busy with their lives, and maybe because the community became very large and fragmented, and we didn't have this anymore. Whereas other communities, such as, for example, the Khoja community, still had like a central mosque that they'd go to. We didn't find that we had that anymore. And so what we tried to do is set up a sort of a community initiative, and we call it now Muslim Families Initiative, and it's where we get together at least once a month and do sort of programs for our children. The aims of which is to try to instill a confidence in our children to be able to be proud of their faith and go out in the outside world eventually and be confident that of their identity as Muslims in this country. We do it through various means. We try to encourage children to prepare things and present them on stage to other people, posters, to present them to the adults. Sometimes we have discussion for the adults, so it's not just for the children, it's for the adults as well, to brainstorm and think of ways to overcome the difficulties, especially socially, that we face in this world. And also we try to commemorate the wiladat of our Prophet and our Ahlulbayt, and through this try to remind our children of these amazing personalities and how they can take lessons from their lives in everything they do. And alhamdulillah, we're still going strong and still at least monthly having events, and we try to look for new innovative ways to try to inculcate a sense of community in our children and in the adults and families. We try to be all inclusive and not just Iraqis, and we have lots of non-Iraqis as well joining us. And eventually we hope that our children will be able to grow up and take this over and carry on, whether it's in the name of this organisation or in whatever way they want, to be able to, for future generations, keep that community spirit going. Because I think if we lose that, we can get very lost in this world, in this country, where, like I said, everyone seems to be feels like everyone's attacking us, and it can feel quite a difficult and an isolated place to be. And I think we need each other to be able to strengthen our iman. And so it's through this community work and like it that we hope to eventually raise a generation of very confident and competent and knowledgeable Muslims, inshallah. If I was to think of what advice would I give to my child, I think there's lots of things, and I'm still learning and still hopefully gathering wisdom with my ongoing with my life. But I think if I was to say anything to my children now, is that never be inhibited by labels that you attach onto yourself or that people attach onto you. When I was growing up, like I said, I was shy and I was quiet, and this is what I was known as. And if I was to look at myself now from the age of, say, 13, I would never, in my wildest dreams, think that I would be a doctor, still working, trying to juggle a family, as well as teaching Quran, as well as doing other community things and organising events and leading and chairing meetings and things like that. It was never something that I could ever do. Even talking to the camera like I am now was something that I'd never envisaged being able to do. But I think that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, with the right intention and with continual striving, you can overcome any barriers that you place on yourselves and that other people put in front of you. Never feel inhibited and unable to achieve what you think needs to be achieved, but always do it with the aim of seeking closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if you do it with that sincerity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lift you and help you and make you do things, help you do things that you never imagined you could do. So never feel limited, and always strive to please Him subhanahu wa ta'ala.